Hi, everyone. I'm Jocelyn Pinchel, a product manager driving Power Platform and Dataverse security at Microsoft. And I'm so excited to see you all at the Power Platform Community Conference. I'll be hosting a couple of sessions and workshops around streamlining your organization's security and governance in the age of AI. And for all you podcast fans, make sure you tune into the low-code approach throughout your travels to stay up to date on all things Power Platform. You got to make sure you're tapped in on all the low-code conversations, even while you're on the go. Thank you, and I can't wait to see you all so soon.
Hey everybody, welcome to a new episode of the Low Code Approach. I'm Sean Feeney, a Senior Product Marketing Manager on the Power Platform team, and I'm joined by...
I'm Wendy Haddad. I'm a Senior Cloud Solution Architect, a delivery lead, and former Microsoft customer, and I am joined by...
Trying to sound very professional today, Ken Aguilar, Principal Program Manager here. Listeners, I'd like to connect with you, if you will, on some topics for Dataverse. So Bruckner up as we introduce Robert from Dataverse. Robert, how are you today?
I'm great. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thanks. So Robert, can you tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what do you do?
All right. I'm Robert Bruckner. I'm Vice President and CTO for Microsoft Dataverse, and that includes aspects such as Power Platform connectors, AI Builder, as well as a number of the experiences that we have been integrating and building for Microsoft Copilot Studio, and also integrating with the Microsoft 365 Copilot.
Very cool. Robert, thank you for joining us. We've been talking a lot about Copilot connectors, especially post-build, where, we're talking about data extensibility and how we're making richer and more robust Copilot experiences. And so there's a lot going on in there. And so we're kind of familiar with talking with Sabine and Jocelyn and Shree about that. But how are we evolving this offering? Why would customers even consider incorporating, adding data and knowledge into their AI strategy? What does that enable them to do?
Yeah, and so that is a really important aspect for enterprises in particular. So as a consumer, you might have interacted with ChatGPT, and it is great at helping you find information, answer questions, which is about the general internet, which is what ChatGPT was trained on. What it doesn't know about is all your specific enterprise data. That includes things such as maybe your email communications or your documents or information that sits in your enterprise systems. And those might be various third-party systems or custom-built systems that you have deployed in your enterprise. And so what we have been focusing on is how do we help you more easily integrate all the data, the knowledge of those systems that you use in the enterprise every day, and help Copilot make use of the data for search, for querying, but also enable Copilot then to take actions on those enterprise systems, because maybe you want to update a customer support ticket. And so these are things that a system like ChatGPT cannot do out of the box. And so we focus then on how do we enable you to do this, and how do we enable you to do this in many cases without having to write code or without having to be a professional developer. And this is a big part of what Copilot Connectors is about. It's really helping you as a low-code maker to enhance and customize your Copilot and build your custom Copilots connected to all the relevant enterprise systems that you need to integrate and to build out your particular tailored experiences.
Yeah, Robert, my first thought is thinking through the knowledge management side of things. So as you are looking and working with customers and how to integrate this data, how do they know what data sources are good candidates for that? Are there, maybe processes or work that they need to do to structure that data? Do they need a full knowledge manager designing all of this? Like what are the requirements, and how do they make those decisions in terms of what to or maybe what not to integrate with Copilot?
That is a really good question. I think it's a question that's top of mind for many of our enterprise customers. I would say there are, of course, many different approaches. And some of our, I would say, more advanced enterprise customers that maybe have, their own data scientists, they historically might have ultimately built their own vector indexes and dealt with some of the data management themselves. And if you are in that category where you have already made such investments, where you have basically specifically figured out, okay, what is the relevant set of data that you want to really then utilize for powering AI-driven experiences and really Copilot experiences, and you have built those out in Azure with, let's say, Azure AI Studio, okay, we help you with that. We make it easy for you to leverage everything you have already done there and integrate that. That said, we have many enterprises that are, well, they don't have that situation. Maybe, data scientists are a scarce resource. They cannot, immediately get the attention of the data scientists on what maybe one of their department needs to do. And so this is where we also help you as a low-code maker of really enabling you to get this done more easily. And this is then really, we try to help you to focus on what is the outcome you want to achieve. That outcome might be, okay, I have data on an intranet website. I need to make it available as part of my Copilot experience, enable the Copilot to reason over that data. Maybe it's some internal knowledge base articles that help you in the customer support scenario. And so really the experience in Copilot Studio is then about you basically identify where is that data, that knowledge stored. So for example, maybe it's on this intranet website, maybe it's on the SharePoint site, maybe it is in the document, in the Word document, maybe it's in the PDF document. So you have in the experience, you basically can select for the type of source and we help you to simply point to the particular source of data. Now, so far, I gave a couple of examples where it was more like file-oriented artifacts. We have similar experiences for more structured data. So the structured data might be your business transactional data that you have behind your CRM application that runs on Dataverse. Or you build a custom Power App, and the custom Power App has its own set of custom tables. And so when the data is stored in Dataverse, we automatically create essentially these vector indexes that allow us to power Copilot experiences. So you, as a maker in Copilot Studio, you simply point to the tables. You tell us, hey, you want your Copilot to reason over these 3 tables, in addition to maybe the SharePoint site, in addition to maybe your company public website where you host some of your product information and your support troubleshooting guidance. And by simply pointing to those resources, you basically tell the Copilot, this is the additional information it should take into account when you power experiences with it. Now, it's also, we allow you to tailor the experience. So you can basically provide additional context of what the information is about, so that to basically help the Copilot better reason over, okay, this information is about your product support pages. And so those are then the things that are all taken into account as you're building out that tailored experience.
So Robert, I'm a little curious. I heard this interesting question from a customer, and it was all related to their data. You gave some really good examples in how to structure it, how to think about your data. But, the data lives many places, sometimes just everywhere, in all these different systems. So one of these systems is the organization's people. So the question that the customer asked me was, can the Copilot, after I've integrated all these data sources, also ingest the data, learn, and add it to my systems so that I now have this record of things, if you will? How does it cope and adapt to my employees now talking to it? Would you be able to maybe comment on that for us?
Yes, I would say there's multiple aspects. Let's start with the original data. When it comes to files, that is often easier, right? You can basically say, hey, I have particular file resources. Let me point the Copilot to it. And it ultimately behind the scenes will ingest that data, create an index, and that way, answer questions about what might be in that file. When it comes to structured information, and especially information that changes, right? this is what's not as easy to say, okay, let's create a copy of that, because the original data might have permissions associated with it of, okay, who can access that data? And it may be fine granular permissions where, okay, maybe you can access, you mentioned employee information as an example. That's highly sensitive data, right? The name of an employee, okay, that has many business purposes where the data can be accessed for. But other properties of the employee information, the employee profile, those might be much more sensitive. And so it is important to ensure that basically at runtime, as the information is accessed, all the original permissions are still reflected. And this is where with Copilot connectors, we have different types of Copilot connectors. Some of them ultimately will, behind the scenes, to facilitate faster responses, to facilitate more sophisticated responses, will essentially create a cache and an index. Versus others, especially the Copilot connectors that connect to your business transactional systems, they generally follow the pattern that they access information in real time, and they access information based on the security context. And that security context might be the actual end user of your Copilot. So you can configure should the security context basically pass through. And in that case, okay, the Copilot for the particular user session has only access to what the actual user has access to. And so that means there is no risk really, right, of accessing information in a context that it shouldn't have access to. And so now there's also cases where maybe you want to bring in additional information. That information isn't really easily accessible. Maybe it's in a custom system and there isn't an out-of-the-box Copilot connector for that. And so this is where an important aspect comes into this, which is Copilot connectors is really built on Power Platform connectors. So anything that you might have already invested in your enterprise today, in terms of building a custom Power Platform connector to your custom system, you can reuse that in context of Copilots, because these Power Platform connectors, you can simply point to them. And so including your custom Power Platform connector, and you can utilize it from within your Copilot. You can also, even if it's a pre-built Power Platform connector, one that maybe is a certified Power Platform connector, you can still tailor some of the metadata. You can tailor it to the purpose of what you want to achieve in your custom Copilot. And so with that, you have really more control of how should the custom Copilot access the data, how should it understand the context of what the data is about, and what is the scope of the data that it can access. And so this is all so far only touched on, okay, querying, searching over the data. You also asked the question, or your customer asked the question about how can I learn, right, from those things? And so this is where in Copilot Studio, we also have experiences that help you as a maker, where you can try out, you can essentially debug, right, what the Copilot is reasoning over the data. You can give it additional hints. What we're also working on is giving you an analytics experience as part of a feedback loop, meaning that even when your end users are interacting with what you have built as a, let's say, custom Copilot or as a Copilot extension, we give you information about, okay, how many users have interacted with it? How successful were these interactions? Feedback they might have provided in terms of thumbs up, thumbs down. And so this is all key information that will help you as a maker of that Copilot experience to understand, is what you have built successful with your target users? Are they struggling, right? Maybe it's questions that your Copilot is answering. Are there certain patterns or questions where users are unhappy with the answers? And that may give you feedback on, okay, maybe you're missing additional pieces of information that you should make available to your Copilot so that it can reason in addition over that information and thereby better answer some of those questions. And so we're really also focused on enabling that feedback loop so that you as a maker who builds and oversees, right, how your Copilot is performing, to help you improve it. Now, that said, we are also giving on top of that controls for the IT organization, for your admins in the organization, so that they can ultimately establish maybe policies. Those policies might basically say that for certain types of systems in the enterprise, maybe you only want to allow particular makers in your organization to build copilots that can access that information. Because it is enterprise systems, sometimes you need some more context, and maybe only certain makers in your organization have the necessary context to build the right experiences, but you don't want to open this up to your entire company to build their own Copilot experiences. So as an IT organization, you do have all the controls. And if you use Power Platform today, you might be familiar with Power Platform Admin Center. And so all the things that you know from Power Platform Admin Center, such as basically DLP policies and how you define that, allow you to define what systems can be accessed through connectors, who can basically create these connections, what can you do in terms of access of data. And you can, for example, limit that maybe you allow read access, you don't allow updates through those connections. And so it's really that, I would say, comprehensive system of controls that we're providing you, both as a maker, but also as an admin, to really get visibility into what is it that those copilots are doing, but also control, okay, what is it the scope of actions maybe that you allow them to do, or the scope of data access you allow them to do, to ultimately reason over your enterprise data and serve the use cases in your enterprise.
I love that you mentioned that you can scope it. And I think that was probably the question that was in customers' minds as they were listening to you describe, because even though we're controlling access at the data source, I might not want them to know that this functionality even exists or this service. So I do want to take you back a little bit, and we probably should have done this at the beginning, but we'll do it in the middle just for the fun of it. We've used the word Copilot connectors, and we tend to be a little bit liberal with Copilot, the terminology Copilot. So Sean's getting all his tally points for all the podcast episodes because we have to say it once per episode. But can you help us understand, can you define what Copilot connectors are, and especially how they're different from Power Platform connectors or the same?
Yes. So I would say at a high level, Copilot connectors is really about how do we enable copilots to access additional data. Because with these large language models, there's certain data knowledge that is baked into them. And that is really based on what they're trained on. And these foundational models are generally trained on public information. And so back to some of the examples that I started with, in your enterprise, you run many systems. That data is not available publicly. The foundational models, they don't know about that. So Copilot connectors is really about how do we enable copilots in a secure, compliant way to access those additional pieces of information. And some of it might be unstructured information in files. Some of it might be real-time access to your enterprise systems. And that way, ultimately allowing the Copilot to read up to the second information about what is the latest on the customer status, or on this particular support ticket, or on your sales system, and utilize that information in terms of how it builds answers to questions. Now, that is the side of data access and data querying. And so Copilot connectors allow you to do that. In addition, Copilot connectors are also about allowing the Copilot to take action. Take action in the sense of, okay, it can update a support ticket, as an example. Or it could, if it's an employee support system, maybe it can help you update certain information on your employee profile, update your address, and so on. And so Copilot connectors are also about allowing you to then ultimately facilitate updating information or creating new information. And so from a technology perspective, what we've done with Copilot connectors is, instead of defining something brand new and then we have to build out this whole ecosystem of connectivity, we looked at right? How can we help enterprises leverage a lot of the things they have already built today? And this is why Copilot connectors is superset of what Power Platform connectors are today. So if you have a Power Platform connector, you can utilize it as a Copilot connector in Microsoft Copilot Studio. In addition, we are also integrating, and you see this already today in Copilot Studio, we have integrated what is called graph connectors. So graph connectors allows enterprises to point to information in their enterprise, for example, files or third-party systems, and graph connectors will access that data, index it, and ultimately also represent the permissions of who can access that information. So graph connectors today operate essentially at an admin level, and they ultimately ingest that data and they index it. And so that is what then allows you, typically used for like knowledge bases, right? Maybe you have knowledge base articles. You have a collection of these articles that sits on a SharePoint site, or you have a collection of these articles that maybe sits in a third-party system that it would need to access through APIs. These graph connectors then basically facilitate taking that information, indexing it in the Microsoft cloud, and then that way facilitating, fast search, fuzzy matching against keywords, and so on. And so Copilot connectors, in summary, is really a combination of everything we've been building up over the past years with Power Platform connectors, as well as graph connectors. And we certainly have more work to do in terms of further simplifying the user experiences around it, making it more seamless. And those are things that we are hyper-focused on, making it even easier really for low-code makers to utilize all those assets that exist already, built out in context of the Power Platform, as well as what they might have built in the enterprise as custom connectors, and being able to leverage it instead of having to build something new, having to do a lot of new investments.
Awesome, Robert. So we've got a lot more questions and only a little bit of time left in here. So we're going to go kind of like rapid fire.
All right.
I'll go first. So legacy systems, we talked a lot about, hooking into Microsoft Stack and being able to incorporate that into Copilots. If I'm thinking of the scope of the solution or the Copilot that I want to build out, am I cut off because I go into a legacy system and I want to incorporate that? Or is that still part of the offering for knowledge and Copilot connectors?
Yeah, you're not cut off at all. So legacy systems, if that system has an API, you can use it with Copilot. And we help you, right? Just like you can build custom connectors in Power Platform, well, you can integrate those legacy systems. Now, if your legacy system doesn't have an API, we can actually still help you. So let's say your legacy system is a Windows 32 application that was built 20 years ago and just has a UI. With Power Automate and robotics process automation and the advancements we've been doing there, you can build ultimately visually, just clicking and pointing and explaining what you're trying to do. And from there, it builds a workflow that ultimately can automate what you're doing in that legacy application. That workflow can also be integrated into your Copilot. So we have an integration of how automate workflows can be basically extensions that your Copilot can utilize. So we really are focused on allowing you as an enterprise to leverage all your past investments, even for applications that don't have an API.
So following up on that, can you give us any examples of how we're working with customers today or independent software vendors, ISVs? Like, how is this actually being deployed in the real world?
I would say there are many examples. One of them is in the travel industry, where there is a big cruise ship operator that basically are powering their public website experiences for their customer, for their consumer customers, by basically helping those consumer customers discover what are the currently available cruise ship offers, but then also answering a lot of the questions, because when customers go on a cruise, maybe for the first time, they might have a lot of questions. And so they really provide an experience to their potential customers of, getting all these questions answered, and at the same time, incorporating information from the enterprise systems about, what are the current cruises that are available, what might be special offers, as well as incorporating information if this is a repeat customer of, okay, what cruises they might have purchased in the past, what might have been some of their preferences and interests, and really then enabling that Copilot experience to really be very customized, very tailored to what those customers maybe have, done in the past. So something that otherwise I would say would be very difficult to achieve, even for a human customer support agent, because they would have to look up things in multiple different systems and pull all the information together. And with that Copilot experience, they can really provide that seamless experience that incorporates all the public information, plus all the enterprise information, plus past customer interactions, plus general information about, hey, when you go on a cruise, what are some of the things that maybe you should think about, or what might be the adventures that you can expect at some of the destinations along the cruise. This is just one of many, many examples that we supporting customers with Microsoft Copilot Studio today.
Robert, I don't know if I never like calling them best practices, but maybe known patterns and practices of successful implementations. But one thing I'm very curious about, and I think our customers are too, is increasing operational efficiency. And like the way you're describing things, it sounds like this will decrease operational overhead, right? Do we have any maybe analytics on that? Or, even when we're looking at the co-pilots themselves, how can the creator of that or the administrators of the co-pilots determine if these co-pilots are being efficient, if they're being effective, and so on? Can you maybe comment a little bit about that?
Yes, I would say we do have public customer stories where okay, we have metrics around how co-pilots help those enterprise customers with their business processes, how it helps them save time or reduce toil or deliver more successful and faster responses on requests. But I would say even for enterprise internal, we are building out analytical experiences directly built into Copilot Studio to help you as an individual maker to understand the effectiveness of your Copilot. How many questions has it answered? How were the answers rated by your customers, which might be your internal employees or might be your external customers that you are providing services to. And then when things were not going well, ultimately giving you additional information of, what might help you to basically fix your experience, or improve your experience to better serve your customers. And so these are all cases where we are looking at also, putting you in the driver's seat as a builder, of these Copilot experiences, of making it very specific to your situation and helping you understand, okay, how does it perform in your situation? Because yes, you can read about all the public customer success stories, but it often, I think, is more impactful than when you can see it firsthand of, okay, as you have built it and how it helped in your situation. Now, in some cases, you might just use the Copilot for yourself, And I think this is often where I always encourage customers with, for example, Microsoft 365 Copilot, try it out because it always improves. It always gets better. And an example of this is you might get, lots of emails, you get lots of Teams messages, you get lots of documents. Copilot can help you catch up and stay up to date on these things. And so it's really kind of also helping your own personal productivity. And I think those are often some of the best, litmus tests of, okay, how does it actually help you? Did it save you time because you didn't spend 15 minutes trying to catch up on this massive email thread? You just summarized it and it identified, okay, here is the 3 key points, and here is, the 2 people that took actions out of this, and here is maybe the open question that is not answered yet.
Hey, Robert, real fast, at the time of the recording, it's coming up on the Power Platform Community Conference. Is there anything you wanted to plug for listeners to take a look at before they go and attend, or if they're thinking about registering for it, what should they look out for?
I would say Power Platform Community Conference is going to be exciting new innovations that we're going to show there. One area in particular is about how do we help makers to be even more effective in tailoring the knowledge of how do they model the knowledge. Because often the information, the raw information you're working with, might not be, in just not a great shape. So how do we help you without doing a lot of heavy lifting, tailor the information to be more effective for the Copilot, as well as improvements in that feedback loop that I've talked about of how do we help you better understand what works well, what maybe doesn't work so well, how can you enhance the Copilot to be even more effective for your specific task that you wanted to do. And so expect a number of new improvements and enhancements in that area that we will make available in context of the Power Platform Community Conference. That said, the conference is called Community Conference for a reason. It's all about the connection. You will have firsthand access to hundreds of engineers and product managers directly from the product team. I will be there. Many of my colleagues are going to be there. I'm looking forward to learning from you as customers. What is it that you maybe are struggling with? What are the challenges that you have? What is it that we can help you with, get things done more easily? Where do we need to improve things? So I'm looking forward to the direct, in-person interactions and learning in those conversations, and at the same time seeing, okay, for the new things that we are bringing at context of that conference and new things that we're making available, how does this help you, right, with some of the challenges that you're facing today, and where maybe there's more things that we should explore.
Well, Robert, I'm so sad that we're coming up on time because you are a wealth of information and we're going to have you back on the podcast. But thank you so much for joining. And then we will pop some resources in the show notes for our listeners around Copilot connectors. I know that you had some blog posts you shared recently on your LinkedIn and some other resources available, as well as I'm sure that we'll have more information with the upcoming Power Platform Conference. So thank you for joining us. Thanks for being a friend of the podcast, and we'd love to have you back.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Sean. And thank you, Ken. It was absolutely awesome to discuss with you. And yes, I'm looking forward to being back on the show and spend some more time talking through how we can help customers, but also what we're learning from customers and how we really ever looking to improve and iterate on what we're offering.
Absolutely. Thanks all.